Hello, everyone. Welcome to She Knows Arsenal. Make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Get into the chat and let me know how you guys are doing today. We're going over the most recent Arsenal news and transfer news. I know that the transfer window is like closed, but that doesn't stop us from talking about some things. So make sure you guys, like I said, are smashing the likes. I hope you guys had a really good weekend and you guys are ready to start a new Arsenal week. Obviously, there's still some international games, and then we go into the weekend and we play Everton. So there's definitely tons to talk about. Let me just pull this up really quick and see how it's looking on the other side because obviously, internet is not always the best. But yeah, get in the comments and let me know what you guys are thinking and feeling. Yeah, it's looking a little not so great, but hopefully the internet will get better as time goes on. I can see I'm, like, laggy, which is awful. Um, Sorry, guys. People are saying, "What is SKA?" Well, it's She Knows Arsenal, SKA, She Knows Arsenal. Just a little abbreviation and a little bit of an updated brand feel. You guys can let me know if you like it or not. If you don't, oh, well. But you guys can let me know anyway. So on today's show, we're gonna be talking about several different things, some injury updates on the men's and women's side, as well as Arsenal's interest in Usman Diomande. We have been linked to him before, and we are linked to him again. And Ramsdale might get a start today against Scotland, so we'll talk about that as well. And are fans actually booing Kai Havertz? And we'll do some questions at the end. So again, make sure you guys are liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Gabriel, he got his first cap, I think, for the Brazilian national team the other day and against Bolivia. And by all accounts, it was a very good debut for Gabriel. He is a player that is more than good enough to be in this Brazilian team. And under Chiche, he just was not somebody that they called upon very regularly. He was actually in the team almost all the way up until the World Cup squad was announced, and then his spot was given away to Bremer because he became fit again. And later on, we found out that one of the reasons why the Brazilian national team setup were not super big on him was because he wanted to skip training in order to be available to his partner who was in labor. And that information came out, and quite frankly, that is a very kind of inhumane reason not to call somebody up to the national team. Like, I get that Brazilian players have a very unique connection to their national team and they want to be a part of it no matter what. And it's like the end all be all for them. But in reality, you need to be there for your wife. Like, let's be serious. And so they weren't necessarily calling him up, and people were thinking it's because he's not good enough. He is more than good enough to be a part of this team. Obviously, they have the likes of Thiago Silva and Marquinhos, who have been there for a long time, but there needs to be that next generation coming up. And then, Gabriel plays for one of the best teams in Europe. He plays for Arsenal, starts almost every single game. And so it makes sense for him to at least be a part of the team. So it was nice to see that their new coach, I think his name is Dinez, gave him the start against Bolivia, and it was a very good debut, in my opinion. Watching him play, he kept it simple. Defensively, he was, very reliable on the ball. He kept it simple, which I think is the best thing. Let's not make any mistakes in possession. And wow, I know I'm lagging so badly. Why am I lagging so bad? I feel like I should go out and come back in. Oh man, I could just see I'm lagging so badly. This is not gonna work. This is not gonna work. Give me a second, you guys. Let me see if I can fix things up for you. I'm lagging very badly, and I can tell, I can see it. Of course, the internet's always fine right before I'm about to start the show, and then as soon as I start it, the internet goes bad. Um, let's see if I can fix it. Just stick with me for a second, you guys. I'm actually going to go out and come back in and try to see if that will make things a little bit better. So give me 1 second. Um, hello, hello, hello. Can everybody see me? Can everybody see me? Can everybody hear me? I can still see it's, like, lagging, but it looks a little bit better. Yeah, let me look at it on my end. Let's see. Yeah, it's just we're just gonna have to, like, continue on. I'm so sorry, you guys, if it's not, like, the best quality. Um, this always happens as soon as I'm about to stream, which is super annoying. Anyways, but from Gabrielle's perspective, like, it was a really good debut and, but at the obviously, at the end of the game, he did sustain a little injury that I think worried a lot of the Arsenal fans because what we really need off of the back of this international break is not to sustain any injuries. We're not in a place where we can have injuries, you know? And, especially in the back line with Timber already injured, Thomas Partey injured, there's just no way that we can have another injury in the back line, which is another reason why I was really happy that Ben White is not a part of Gareth Southgate's plans because it's like the last thing we need is for you to get injured, right? But Gabriel, he left the pitch against Bolivia, um, with some sort of injury, and he got onto the bench, and then they put, like, a little ice pack on his thigh, and I thought, Hopefully that's not, like, a torn muscle or anything like that." But, according to the Evening Standard, Arsenal have been handed a Gabriel fitness boost after an injury scare on his Brazil debut. The Gunner defender is training as normal after being forced off in Friday's, World Cup qualifier against Bolivia. The center back had given the Gunners a scare on Friday when he came off in the closing stages of Brazil's 5-1 win over Bolivia in the World Cup qualifying. Gabriel, who was making his senior international debut, was then seen applying ice to his right thigh, like I said, as he was sitting on the bench. However, the 25-year-old trained with Brazil's squad as normal in Lima on Sunday ahead of their latest qualifier against Peru on Tuesday, easing fears that he has sustained an injury, which is amazing news. Gabriel is one of our most reliable performers. He's one of our most reliable, in terms of always being available and also performance level. I think for the most part with Gabriel, you're going to get a, 6, 7, 8 performance from him. He does have his moments, but for the most part, like he's such an important part of the team. And so we definitely need him 110%. So let's see what you guys are saying about Gabby, Big Gabby. Um, let's see. Blaze says Arsenal fans can't calm down. Gabrielle is all right. Exactly. Um, DJ says maybe it's the internet in the States. Maybe it's so bad. It could just be like on my end, like maybe my feed is not good, but you guys can see me, which is hopefully the what happens. Let's see what else you guys are saying. Clement is saying Odegaard is expected to sign a 6-year deal to remain at Arsenal, and the team is working on a contract to keep Ben White with the club. I saw that stuff as well. Really do think we're doing good with the contract extensions. Tony said if Big Gabby was a right mid, he'd be the best in the world. Or was at Real Madrid or a right mid? What do you mean? Be more specific. Gabrielle is he's a weird one because I think he's underrated in some respects, but I also think that like he makes enough big mistakes where I can understand why a casual that doesn't watch Arsenal on a regular basis would consider him not that great. But everybody makes mistakes, but I think if you want to be considered world class, like you have to really nip those out. Like the big moments, you really can't be, making those types of mistakes that Gabriel makes. They're becoming more few and far between. I think, for a period of time, it felt like it was happening more often. And that mixed with his temper was just not a good combination for a team that tends to get the harshest punishment possible whenever they do anything. So, I'm glad that Gabrielle is kind of smoothing those things out. But equally, I don't think any of the mistakes that he made were enough for him not to be in this Brazilian team. Like, that was just so whack. We Move says Gabriel is a beast. The scare could have been lacking game time at Arsenal prior to the United game, but he is okay. Exactly. And it's so important to have so many, like, to have a good amount of players that are reliable fitness wise, like knock on wood, obviously, because like I don't want to be responsible if something happens. But Gabrielle and White, I think in particular, you can pretty much always count on. And that's super important because you always have that ever constant. We have some other players with some injury issues, but for the most part, those two are always available. Let's see. Samuel says everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has those days, says says Samuel, quoting Hannah Montana there. Great quote. Ken says, hey, Jess, great content as usual. Come on, you Gunners. Thank you so much. Let's see what else. Mackenzie says it didn't even look bad to me. I wasn't really worried. I think as fans we're hypersensitive to tiny injuries. I think it's the balance, right? It's like, yeah, I think we overreact to every little thing. And so anything that looks like it could be something we panic about. But at the same time, I think we have had so many incidents where our seasons have like lived and died with a significant injury to a certain player. I can understand why that like PTSD is kind of there. But it didn't look bad, but I think just getting the notification or the information from the Evening Standard that he is, continued on in training just gives us that whew, because we're playing Everton at the weekend. And this Everton team is even more physical than it was last season. And last season, we couldn't cope. So the last thing we need is to have Gabriel, our most physical and aggressive defender, out for that game. And I think that was also something that people were thinking about. Tony was saying at Real Madrid. Yeah, if he was at Real Madrid, people would rate him. I do think there is an element to like Arsenal in general where our players are just like not seen as like they're not seen as serious. They're not, it's like unless they're playing somewhere else, like if you just put a different kit on them, people would rate them a little bit more. But I think it's also like just perception of Arsenal is that if you play at Arsenal, you can't be very good. But that reputation will change over time with Arsenal maintaining their like status as a competitive team, but also winning trophies. That changes the perception of a team quicker than anything else. And so until Arsenal win trophies, I don't think that will change that much, in terms of our players can perform really well and people will still not think that they deserved anything. And Gabrielle is one of those that I think suffers from that quite a bit. Let's see. Chris Frazier said, I'm not going to lie. I was watching the game when the strapping and the ice went on. I nearly shot myself. No, I hear you. Like, I get the aspect of like, oh my gosh, you guys are always panicking about something, but it's Gabrielle. And we're so like, please don't get injured. Please don't get injured. I think we're like the only team that's like that. So I understand that for sure. Blaze says, I think what Tony means is if Gabrielle was playing for Real Madrid, people thought he was a world-class player. And no, I agree. Like, I think if you put Saka in a Bayern Munich kit or you put Saka in a Man City kit, people would automatically just say, world class based on the way that he's already performing and like what he puts out there. Like the funny thing, side note about Bukayo Saka, um, is that people are saying that he's having a poor start to the season. Let me show you what a poor start to the season for Bukayo Saka fucking looks like, you guys. Like, I mean, they did this last season as well, where people were saying that he was shocking and so bad at the beginning of the season. And oh my gosh, he needs to step up, only for him to like really go to another level about a month or two into the season, which is kind of what you're supposed to do anyway. And this is a bad start to the season for Bukayo Saka, by the way. These are, his key passes per 90. Here, let me pull down this. His key passes per 90 and his expected assists per 90. Look at that. Excuse me. This is Bukayo Saka, like way up here. Like way up here. Like, this is a bad start to the season for Bukayo Saka. And I think he may have 2 assists and 1 goal or something like that so far in this season. Or does he have 2 goals? I'm going to check really quick. But, this is a bad start to the season. But again, he gets that because he's an Arsenal player. And, he was totally like, Delo had him on toast and all this kind. No, he didn't. Saka was just fine. And most of our players play really well consistently, Gabriel, Ben White included. And they're never really spoken about in the same vein as players that do less, but play for teams that people just consider better teams. Let's see what he has for the season so far, Bukayo. Yep, 2 goals and 1 assist already in the season. It's only been 4 games in, but he's having a poor start to the season. Have a day off. But yeah, it's in Nocturnal Gunner makes a Nocturnal Gunner makes a good point, saying below par for his standards. The bar is so damn high for him. I think the exact same thing about like Odegaard. I think I'm the biggest Odegaard fan. He's my favorite player on the team. But I know when I'm watching a really good Odegaard game and I know when I'm not. And he has not even kicked into gear yet. Like Odegaard is nowhere near what he should be or what he is. But, he was so consistent last season. I'm sure there's, for some players, there might be a little bit of a hangover from last season. That being said, he hasn't been horrendous. Like he's been probably at like a 6 or a 7 this season so far. But some players can't even dream of a 6 or a 7. Some people can't even dream of it. So there you go. But Gabriel, we don't have to worry about that. He's training, and so we have nothing to worry about. Another injury piece of news that we need to talk about is Viviana Miedema has returned to team training after her ACL injury. So Miedema is obviously one of the best players in the world, and Arsenal women, very disappointedly so, went out of the UCL qualifying stages in the last couple of days. And that hasn't happened since like 2018, 2019, where they haven't been in the Champions League. Very disappointing day for the club. Very damaging day from commercial reasons and competitive reasons. Arsenal really should be in Champions League. But thinking about positives and what could actually boost us for the rest of the season is players like Beth Mead and Miedema coming back into the team, because they're 2 of the best players in the world, and they'll definitely help the team moving forward. For the first time since suffering an ACL injury in December, Miedema has joined her teammates in training, hitting the pitches at the Adidas headquarters in Germany. Our Dutch forward has been undergoing rehabilitation back at London Colney for about the past 9 months and began running again on the zero gravity machines back in May. Ahead of the start of the Women's Super League season, which starts in October, she joined her fellow returnee, Beth Mead, in team training as they both drive towards a return to the matchday squad. So we all know that Arsenal women have suffered a significant amount of ACL injuries, and women's football, in total, has suffered so many big ones to massive players, Viviana Miedema and Beth Mead being 2 of a couple. But for Arsenal women, Having no Leah Williamson, no Miedema, no Beth Mead is significant because as good as the team is, and as good of players as we've added, there's nothing like having super experienced and talented players in your team that have been there, done that, and worn the shirt. So for me, this is a huge boost. And Miedema for me is like a player that can make something out of nothing, will definitely change, the dynamics of the team, probably playing in a deeper role more as a number 10, which is our natural position anyway. She's an insane striker, but she's also a number 10 in her own right. So getting that next level of creativity in the team and some more experience will definitely help. But yeah, now there's tons of pressure on Jonas Eidevall because going out of Champions League means that you're pretty much expected to win the league. So there you go. I mean, hello. So yeah, but Viviana Miedema back in training, which is really, really good. There's a question here from Emily Emilio says, Jess, are you Jonas out? No, of course not. There's pressure on him, and I think he has to win the league. But setbacks happen, and shit happens. Sometimes you just don't perform to the level that you're supposed to. And he'll know what the pressure is like at Arsenal at this point. This is his third season. So I'm not Jonas out, but he needs to win the league. And there's no excuses not to because we don't have the Champions League to focus on anymore, but that's a huge blow to Arsenal women for sure. Chris Fraser says Viv and Beth coming back will be huge for us. Add them to Russo. I agree. Tony says Viv, Russo, Mead is insane. And they just need time to gel. They need to get the hangover from the World Cup out of their legs. And you just need to hope that Viv and Beth come back at a certain level because ACL injuries do affect women a lot differently than they do men. It's more difficult to come back. And, you lose a little bit of that speed. You lose a little bit of something with those types of injuries. But nevertheless, it's a really, really good thing that those players are back. Make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Next on our agenda is Arsenal's promise to return for Ousmane Diomande after a £35 million bid was rejected. Arsenal have been linked to this player for a long time. Ousmane Diomande is a 19-year-old center back that plays for Sporting. So we saw him play against us in the Europa League last season. And by all accounts, he's a very, very good young player. Arsenal remain interested in Ousmane Diomande and have promised to return next summer. Sporting rejected a 35 million euro offer from Arsenal. The Lions are preparing a salary increase for Diomande and remain interested and to remind clubs that are interested that his release clause is set at 80 million euros. So this is a player that they're expecting to get a pretty big fee for, which they should. Let's be real. Like Portuguese players or players that have played in the Portuguese league, I do think tend to like do well in the Premier League. And I don't know if it's just like the level of physicality or what, but they tend to do quite well when they transfer over. Players like Nunez, Ruben Diaz, players like that. They've come over and have done really well, in the Premier League. So they tend to get good fees, and rightly so, because their players tend to translate a lot better to the league. He's 19 years old, and by all accounts, he's a physical defender. He's like I'll pull up his stats here. I think he's like 6'3" or something like that. 6'3", 6'4", 19 years old. Ivorian international, playing for Sporting, like I said. 4 matches played, he has 1 assist. That doesn't really matter for defenders, but very, very good stats, and I'll show them to you. You guys know I love my FB ref. Some people hate it, some people love it. It's my jam, so I'm going to show it to you guys now. Let me just share my screen. Can you guys see? Let me know. But yeah, so this is his FB ref. Obviously, we're always looking for green bars. And from an Arsenal perspective, I know that it's like, what are we looking for green bars wise? Like, why do we care about anything other than the defensive stats? Because obviously, you look down here, aerials won, clearances, and blocks are quite low. So from a defensive standpoint, you're like, does that mean he's a shitty defender? No, it depends on how the team plays. If the team is like a very possession oriented team, then their defenders are going to be sitting up at the halfway line, dictating play from that position, just like Saliba, just like Gabriel, just like the players that we have. And so the tackles are really high, which is interesting. But in terms of like passes attempted, passes completed, progressive carries, successful take-ons, touches in the attacking penalty area, progressive passes received, he's up there. You can see that on the ball, he's a good player, right? And that's important. Like, we want somebody that I think Arsenal do need another center back. I think without Saliba, if we were to lose him, we would struggle building from the back in a three the way that we do. The way that we play now, it's like the left back and Ben White are flanking Saliba, or Gabriel and Ben White are flanking Saliba. And, I think if you don't have Saliba there, you'll lose some of that ability to build from the back the way that Saliba does, because he's so good for us doing that. But I wanted to point out, in terms of like similar players, number 2 on that list is Yuri and Timber. And it's very hard to find a player that's similar to Timber. I mean, in stature, they're not the same. Timber is smaller and more agile than Diomande, but Diomande has some of those same qualities that Yuri and Timber has on the ball, which is important. I think if we're going to have him out for a significant amount of time, I do think Arsenal need another defender. I think we're cutting it close. And if we went into the January window, depending on how many more injuries we have, I would say we need to either look at an attacker or a defender, and bringing in another center back would give us that stability. And also, because of Diomande, the way that he plays and where he plays is not super similar to where Timber plays. You wouldn't have to worry about doubling up in a position that you don't need to double up in. One thing that I didn't really want to see is for Arsenal to bring in another right-sided center back, right back, because once Timber comes back, where is this person going to play? So he's different. He's more of like a traditional center back, but he can play from the back, which is really, really good, which is what Arsenal need. So I do think Arsenal need to go back into the market and bring in a center back, or, some sort of defender, because we are light there. And we all know that without your defenders, the way that you build up, it doesn't work. We can see that. So I think as much as like fans want to see attackers come in, we cannot be sitting there without players that can build up from the back. It's suicide for a team like us. So people are asking, what foot does he use? I'm just looking that up right now. It doesn't say it on here, but he's going to be expensive. That's one thing for sure. That's the one thing I'm not sure about, is, do Arsenal have the money? He's right-footed. And he plays center back, but he can play on either side, which is good. And by all accounts, he looks like a really decent player. And Arsenal have been linked to him before. Arsenal tried to buy him from Michelin, a Norwegian team, and we didn't get him. Sporting got him, and now they're going to mark him up, mark up the price significantly. But for a profile like this, good ball playing center back with the physical aggression, because what I think essentially what you want is somebody with the physicality and the 1v1 defending capabilities of like maybe like Gabriel, maybe like a Kanate type, but you want them to be able to be on the ball as well. Those types of players cost a lot more. So that's the T. Chris Fraser says, yeah, right-footed, but is comfortable on the left, great potential. And, when you're trying to backfill your center backs, I would prefer to go for a younger player than an older player. Like, I don't want to go for an older guy that's been around the block. Like, that's not something that I would want to do. I'd want to backfill with a younger profile of somebody that could have a good potential and a high ceiling. This would be that, back there with Kivior as well, who is still cooking. I know some people are not as high on Kivior as I am, but as we saw with Fabio Vieira, good things come to those who wait. Patience is key and things like this. So Kivior will definitely come good, and he's been fine so far. Maximius says he's 19. Maybe we can coach him to get more on the ball than an old school defender. He's already plays on the ball. He's already somebody that does a lot in build up, and he did a lot of that against us as well. Like, he can pick up the ball and dribble from the back, and he also has a decent pass on him. I do think maybe I think he does, like, in his comps. There are comps of him against us. And he was good. So, yeah, unfortunately. Eric Toss says, are you going to ever do a phone-in show? Yes. Once I kind of get everything together, what I'm working on first, just to let you guys know, is the memberships. I don't like how the memberships are set up right now. I want to actually move them to Patreon. So what I'm going to do within the next week is get rid of memberships altogether on YouTube and move them over to Patreon. I'm doing watch-alongs soon, which they're not going to be just for they're not going to just be for Patreon, but watch-alongs are going to be their player ratings, and then we're going to have things on Patreon that are going to be like rewatches and also match previews and stuff like that, and then we'll add phone-in shows in as well. But I need to work one at a time because I want to give you guys more content, but I want to make sure that, like, I'm not overdoing it and not being able to provide good value. Philip says Tamiyasu shows what a weapon CB he could be for Arsenal. I love Tamiyasu. Like, Tamiyasu is like a defender after my own heart. I love good 1v1 defenders, and I think for so long Arsenal have been defense optional. It's been a very tough road for somebody who's like, yeah, you need to actually be able to defend. Like, it's one of my pet peeves to have a bunch of defenders back there that just are shit. And for so long, we went through this phase of like, actually, you don't have to be able to defend. Just stand back there like a scarecrow, and just get dribble past. And, it was just shocking. And with Tamiyasu, I think we paid like 18 million for him or something like that on the final day of the transfer window, and the same window where we got Sambi and Nuno and Odegaard and Ben White and stuff. And it was like between him and Emerson Royale. And I've never been more happy that we went in a different direction than that. He's such a good defender, like, just typical, like, he's just a good 1v1 defender, athletic, quick, but also can play. One thing that we had lost with Tamiyasu for a while was his composure on the ball. And I think it was just the amount of injuries that he had and maybe not having enough confidence and having, like, I don't know, the World Cup really shook him up. I think Japan going out, he had like a reaction to it that, just reading between the lines, like, he had a very difficult time after Japan went out. And I think he felt like guilty or, whatever. And so it took him a while to, like, kind of get back up to speed. But now that he's back up to speed, if he can just stay fit, he is such a good player for us to have. When we go to Everton, that's a Tamiyasu game. When we go away to Newcastle and we go away to Liverpool, that's Tamiyasu game. A game to have four big center back type fullbacks back there, and having somebody like him that can shut down the right wingers is so important. So I'm super excited about Tamiyasu, man. Like, I love that guy so much. He just needs to remain fit, and that's easier said than done at this point when you have so many different competitions. He's obviously going to go to the Asia Cup. And so I'm praying on his knees. I'm praying on his hamstrings. I'm praying on all his muscles because I need this guy to stay fit. Eric Toss says his long balls were crazy. He can hit them with his left foot as well. He's two-footed, like, or I'm not even going to pretend to say the word, like, bipedal. Is that what it is? I'm not gonna he's both-footed. That's what we're gonna say. He's both-footed, right? Um, which is rare, you know? Um, let's see. Roger says Tommy and Kivior both had strong games on international duty. Tommy won like 10 headers against Germany. I love that. Chris Frazier said, on my days, Tommy was sensational against Germany. Barring Germany's one goal, he absolutely pocketed Germany's entire attack. Love hearing that. Prince Tutu says ambidextrous. What did I just say? What was the word that I just tried to say? I'm gonna look it up. I know there's a word that I've heard it before. Okay, let's see. Yes, ambipedal, ambipedal, having the ability to use both feet equally well. See, you guys tried to come for me. You're like, what is she saying? So ambipedal, I think, is ambidextrous, but for feet. So yeah, it is a word. I'm serious. Um, so yeah, but happy about this link. We'll see if it comes to fruition. We know that we're constantly linked to people and we don't bring them in, but something that Arsenal do need to look at is those defensive options, because right now we are one serious injury from catastrophe. So there you go. There's 140 of you guys in here. Make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel. Let's talk a little bit about a player on international duty and a little bit around what's going on with the England squad. And that's Ramsdale. He could be handed a start for England against Scotland today. And just a little bit on Ramsdale, like Ramsdale is a player that I like so much, and I think he's a very talented young keeper. But some of the data coming out over the last couple of weeks regarding, the goals that we've let in and whether or not we should have kept those out has definitely made me feel a lot more happier that we brought Raya in, but also a little bit worried about Aaron Ramsdale. And I think, there's a harshness as well, like looking at every single goal and being like, he could have probably like done better with that. He could have done better with this. He could have done something. It's hard to know whether or not because if you're not a goalkeeping expert, it's really difficult to know what goals should not have went in and which ones should. But right now he's letting in more than he should. And I think the biggest goal that showed up as one that he should have saved is the first goal from Fulham. I think that's the one that data wise shows up as one that he should save. Now, it's a Saka mistake that leads to it, but the best goalkeepers save you from yourself. And I don't think right now Ramsdale's doing enough of that. But at the same time, I don't think he's doing poor enough to like say he should be dropped. Does that make sense? Like a player could be in a position where he needs to do better and there's some red flags there, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he's done enough to be dropped. And I do think there's an element of Raya being there that makes people like want to find a reason to drop Ramsdale, but I think we also have to like be cognizant of the fact that like once you drop him, that's it. I don't think there's a world where you drop somebody like Aaron Ramsdale early on in the season and then you try to bring him back into the team later on. I know that Arsenal are putting out there that this is a part of the plan and we want two really good goalkeepers, but this doesn't feel like that to me. I think there will be a moment where Raya will come in, but once he comes in, especially if it's a Premier League game, that's going to be it. But Aaron Ramsdale could be given a rare opportunity to start for England against Scotland. Tomorrow night, sorry. And this is coming from Football Daily. This is not set in stone, but I would love to see Aaron Ramsdale start for England in just one game. I don't think Pickford is doing anything spectacular to keep his position. And maybe Aaron starting for England will give him a little bit of confidence. I think he's had a little drop in confidence. And beyond the shot stopping, what has really kind of like stood out to me is the inconsistencies in his passing out from the back. And the lack of creativity coming from that position, and how if you look at some of his older clips and like people are like, "Oh, they don't press us as much." I'm like, it's not that. It's his passes don't have as much zip on them. They're a little weak. Some of his chips, are, balls out to, the fullback or to Saka or Martinelli are going straight out of play. And he's just not as reliable on the ball as he was before. And I wonder if that's like a couple of times being caught out, being worried about making a mistake. When you play for a team that's possession based, that requires your goalkeeper to play from the back, you can't be afraid to make a mistake. You have to continue to do what you've been asked to do, regardless of making mistakes or not. And it doesn't seem like he's doing that anymore. And so I would love to see Ramsdale maybe get a start against Scotland. Maybe that would help his confidence, because I do think he starts against Everton. There hasn't been enough there to drop him, but we need Ramsdale at his best. And right now, I don't think we're anywhere near his best. He's not poor, but it's not his best. And for Arsenal, because our margins are so fine, like he kind of has to be at his best. There's very little margin for error, right? And so Ramsdale, I want to see, him get a little bit of confidence, and maybe that can come tomorrow night against Scotland. Let's see what you guys are saying about. Samuel says, I am more comfortable to play Tommy against Everton to break the curse of the god awful stadium. The main thing is who is gonna invert. Eric Taw says he might get dropped very soon. I feel Raya might come in very soon. Yeah, after the United game, there was some reports that had come out that, Raya could be handed a run of games sooner rather than later. And once it happens, that's it. Like, I just don't see a world where Aaron Ramsdale doesn't become a head case after he's dropped. It's just the goalkeeper position has been the same for since the beginning of time, because it's just the type of position. It's a confidence position. It's a, one where you have a number one and a clear number two. And when you muddy the waters, I think sometimes it's more off of the back of like an accident rather than by design. And I think Arsenal are in a position where they're trying to paint it as something that is by design, but it's more just Raya became available. We took advantage of that. And that's it. We brought him in and he'll eventually become the number one. Now, something else that was interesting that came out over international break was Matt Turner talking about why he left Arsenal. And I figured he would always leave this coming summer, but him leaving so early was a shock to me. But, he spoke about, not really the games that he should have been given. He wasn't even getting those. And the one that really stands out is Sporting at home. We need to be careful about the way that we manage players and what dropping them says about how you feel about the player. And I thought Matt Turner was very unlucky not to start the game against Sporting at home. He wasn't great against Sporting away, but nobody was. We were very poor in that game, and we're lucky to come away with a draw. And there was also a lot of miscommunication back there because you had so many people that hadn't played together before. You had Saliba and Kivior there together. You had Jorginho in front of them instead of like Partey. There was a lot of confusion back there. And so, but he was the Europa League goalkeeper and he was dropped. And then it wasn't like dropping him helped us at all. Like, he didn't even get like subbed in to do the penalties, which he probably should have, because Ramsdale doesn't really do that well in penalty shootouts anyway. And so I actually don't blame Matt Turner for leaving, because if I'm not even going to get the games that are supposed to be my games, then I'm going to dip, But going back to Ramsdale, like, he's a good goalkeeper, but we're not getting anywhere near his best. And so we need to figure out a way to do that. Olu says, nonetheless, he's still a decent goalkeeper, but it's surprising that he's yet to improve on his positioning. He hasn't really improved. I think he's regressed since he's been here. Like the goal that Fulham scored, like everybody's yelling at me that it's Saka's mistake and there's nothing that he could have done about it. But his positioning was really, of course, he's going to be further out because he expects us to have possession and not lose it there. But the way that he was scrambling, and really, that was not a great shot from Pereira at all. I do think he should be saving that, even though it's a Saka mistake. But, some people will look at it and say no. Chris says, Mikel originally wanted Raya a few years ago, right? That's worrying for Rambo. Yeah. This is the goalkeeper that they always wanted. And the goalkeeper recruitment is very much so led by Inaki Kanya. And whether that's the right thing or not, I don't know. Inaki has done, I wonder how Inaki did not see that Emiliano Martinez was a good goalkeeper. He was there. He was watching Leno and Martinez, and he couldn't see that Emmy was a better goalkeeper. That's crazy. And then he was the one who suggested Runnerson. And now he wants Raya. And I think Raya is a good goalkeeper and it'll work out as fine. But I think Kanya has a little bit too much say for a goalkeeper coach, but that's just me. But I think the the different coaches like Yover and the goalkeeper coach have a lot of power over their specialty. So that's just the way the Arsenal do things. D Brown says Ramsdale has poor footwork and it's the reason for his issues. Ian said it's pronounced ambipedal or ambipedal. It's ambipedal, I think. But I'm not going to say it anymore. I'm just going to stay two-footed. I don't have time to be saying things wrong. That is not that serious. Eric Toss says, I have a strong feeling Raya might be the number one after the international break. Once you do it, that's it. It becomes a big talking point. Everybody will be writing about it. That's the thing. There's a bigger thing than just what's going to happen in the team. It's people are premeditating this decision coming. So the draft's are already there. The articles are already written. It's going to be a huge talking point. So once you do it, you have to be strong in that decision. And also remember that Ramsdale, you can't bring him back in after that. Not anytime soon. He's going to be a head case. It just doesn't happen like that. Olu says his positioning is awful. Been saying it for days, and he's erratic. One thing also is I don't know if he's organizing. I think he's so focused on himself and the mistake that he can potentially make when we're on dead ball situations like corners and free kicks, that he doesn't even think to organize his back line, because the lack of organization and the scramble and the calamity that happens when we're defending set pieces is not good. The goalkeeper, I do think, is responsible for making sure everybody's in their right positions. But if you're so heavily focused on yourself, what can you do? So yeah, Maximia says, what about one for the cup competitions? The first time I see Raya, I would love for it to be Brentford in the Carabao Cup. I think that's the safest way to do things. Thank you to Brentford for allowing him to play against them. There's teams that I know wouldn't let that happen, but I do think that that would be the best way. Doing it for Everton, I think it's too harsh. It's too, but naturally, if you bring him in against Brentford and he does well, which is a Premier League team, then you can make a case for him starting another game. But it should be a cup competition goalkeeper and a Premier League goalkeeper. But I just think this is a slow breakup. It's a soft launch breakup. It's kind of okay, we're going to make it seem like it's one thing, but eventually Raya will become number one. And that was always the plan. So yeah, but love Ramsdale. Think he's great. I'm worried about him for sure. Diallo says, I know the data on goalkeepers is not good, but our eyes ain't lying. It looks like Rambo has regressed since the World Cup. And that's the thing. It's the data is actually lining up with what we're seeing. And then people will try to explain away the data as well. But this, but that. I just think in general, the club is even telling you that they don't trust Ramsdale, because instead of Matt Turner leaving and then bringing in another number two that was at Matt Turner, Matty Ryan levels, they brought in a number 1 goalkeeper, and that's exactly what they did when they wanted to move Leno on. And so I just don't know how people can see it other than, even if you don't believe the data and you don't believe your eyes, believe the club. The club are making moves that are not like aligned with, we're just trying to bring in a number 2 goalkeeper. They're taking actions that say, we think that there needs to be a change, or something can be done better. And so your eyes ain't lying. Like, I watch Ramsdale, and what I think is like, he lets in goals that other goalkeepers would not let in. On the ball, he's regressed quite significantly, and he makes 1 or 2 saves a game that make people forget about it and say, well, if Ramsdale wasn't there, what would have happened? I did that at the back end of last season as well. But if we don't let in the early easy goal, then maybe we're not in that position anyway, and there's that. And Ramsdale's really good in situations where he's under siege. When, the other team is on our backs, like, he has that relegation thing about him, where a relegation side is going to always be under siege constantly. And so he's good in those situations where he's constantly being stimulated and always a part of the game. I think for a team like Arsenal, that's going to have only give up 1 or 2 really good opportunities to the opposition, he has to stay. We need a goalkeeper that can stay engaged for that entire time, be reliable on the ball, and make those 1 or 2 saves and keep that clean sheet. And he's having a difficult time doing that at the moment. And I feel really, really bad, because it's at this point with this team, and I think people are not really taking this in consideration, because we like the players more than we like the previous teams of the last 10 years. Every player we're going to like. And so it's going to feel harsh. You know what I mean? It's going to feel harsh, but we still need to improve despite liking the players that we have right now. So yeah. Dev M says, I like Ramsdale as a person, but he is not in the best form right now. He's been given plenty of chances to get out of his funk. If Arteta is truly about meritocracy, then he should bench Ramsdale. Eric Toss says, remember also towards the end of last season, he was making a lot of mistakes. Diallo says, exactly. Signing Reyes said everything we needed to hear. They didn't want to risk it. Tony says, I'm actually chill about the goalkeeper situation. The best one we have will play. I love Rams, and I don't like small keepers, but I trust Arteta more than myself. Philip says, I still don't understand why we let Onana go to Inter for free when we were still interested. It's because he couldn't play for a significant amount of time. We had already I think people forget that he was suspended for a significant amount of time because of that drug situation that he had. So I think that affected Arsenal's ability to go in for him, and Inter eventually got him for free after all of that had been cleared up. But I don't think it aligned timeline wise, but I'm okay with us missing out on Onana, to be honest. Dev M says, honestly, the back line looks shaky with Ramsdale in the goal. Teams are overperforming their XG when Ramsdale is in goal. I think if I'm an opposition coach and I'm telling my players what to do, I would just say shoot low and shoot hard. It'll probably go in the back of the net, because that's kind of where we're at. I remember, I think Madison said something quite similar as when he scored against us at home in the 4-2 win when he was at Leicester. He said that, they had kind of talked about shooting low to the front post, and he did that and it went in. So teams are being coached to shoot low and hard, especially at the near post with Ramsdale, because it's almost guaranteed to go in. The high shots he can get to, but the low ones he's having a hard time getting to. And so that's a problem I think we have. DJ Oni says, I wish Ramsdale would sweep more. Boy says, another new goalkeeper. We sold an eventual World Cup winner to play musical chairs with goalkeepers. I think Martinez needed to go. For me, I think that's one of those where at some point we need to move on from it. Some people are still holding on to it. I don't know if you guys watch Emi Martinez for Aston Villa, but he's a completely different goalkeeper for them than he is for Argentina. And he's a good goalkeeper and was probably better than Leno, but we need a goalkeeper that's really, really good with their feet. Like, that's so important, and I'm not sure that Emi Martinez is necessarily that. He also did not wanna fight for his position at all. Like, he was basically told that 80% he was the number 1, but he had only played 8 games for Arsenal at that time. And so you do also have to, like, Leno hadn't done much in that time, like, to be dropped. He just got injured, and it was unfortunate. So unless Inaki Kanya had kind of came to Arsenal beforehand and was like, Martinez is the better goalkeeper, let's kind of slowly phase Leno out. That never happened. Leno was the number 1. He got injured, and you have to do things the right way. And I think just dropping Leno after that injury would have been quite harsh. But equally, they didn't tell Martinez that he was the number 2. They just said, like, you'll be you'll be the starter, but you have to work for it. Leno's not out of the picture. And he basically was like, no, it's number 1 or nothing at all. And after 8 games, he really had not earned that, as far as I was concerned. Like, I'm over the Martinez thing. Like, I think it's just a shame we couldn't sell him for more. Chris says, spot on, Jess. Rambo doesn't get down to save low shots. Exactly. So yeah, over the Emi Martinez thing, I think had Inaki Kanya been able to see one goalkeeper was better than the other, that would have solved some of our issues before Leno got injured. But 8 games, like, when it was enforced by injury, I do think you have to do right by Leno, give him the opportunity to take his spot back. Martinez didn't want that. He wanted no competition whatsoever. Decided he wanted to leave, and we just had to, like, let that go. Not selling him for better money is kind of the only thing that I regret from that. There's 130 of you guys in here. Make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel. We're going to move to our last subject of the day, and that's fans are booing Kai Havertz, which is something that Stuart Robson has said from ESPN. And I just wanted to touch on it because, like, it's total bullshit, but it's just the narrative that's kind of going around, which is just, maybe this is kind of where I think, like, some people were saying the other day that we need to, like, slow down on talking about Kai Havertz every single day. And maybe this is where it makes kind of more sense, is because the more that fans talk about it, it's hard not to, but the more that fans talk about it, the more the media makes it a, like, number 1 conversation all the time. And with Kai Havertz, I will say that, like, I'm having a difficult time seeing the him being in that position at the moment. I'm struggling. I am, just because, like, I feel like maybe I just want a different player in there. Like, I like a player with a little bit more energy, a little bit more intensity. And I think just watching him, I'm feeling like I'm watching somebody that's a little bit like, and so it's a personal preference thing. So I'm having a difficult time seeing what other people are seeing when they're saying that, like, oh, there's all these examples of, like, where he's doing a decent job in that position. But Stuart Robson was saying that he has gone to Arsenal and the Arsenal fans don't want him in the side. They are booing him at the moment. They don't want him in the team. Now, I went to 3 Arsenal games. I went to the Community Shield. Actually, I went to the Monaco game. I went to the Community Shield. I also went to the Forest game as well as the Fulham game. Did nobody boo that man? They didn't. Like, nobody is booing him. In fact, fans in the stadium are doing their best to be positive around Kai Havertz, even though it's hard. He's coming from a rival. He's not a player that anybody thought that we should be looking at or anything. And he hasn't really proved any of the doubters wrong yet. And so I think from a fan's perspective, you want him to do well. It's very difficult to see it when, he's missing sitters and he's freezing on the sideline, and the pass back that he did, or not the pass back, but the pass to Odegaard that's cut out, and they run down the pitch and score a goal. It's hard, but Stuart Robson is fucking lying his ass off. Nobody is booing him at all, and this is an embellishment. If I'm being kind, that's an embellishment. It's he's lying, basically. I feel like he has the right, or feels comfortable saying this, because of the narrative around Kai Havertz, and he's such a big focus point of our fan base and every other fan base and the media. And I am desperate for this guy to just score a goal, to get an assist. And to be honest, I think he's been robbed of a couple assists, to be fair. Like against Nottingham Forest, I think Nketiah should do better for at least one of the chances that Kai Havertz sets up for him. I think at the beginning of the Crystal Palace game, he puts a nice ball into Martinelli, and Martinelli fumbles over it. And he was very marginally offside for the Odegaard goal against Fulham. And so you think about those moments, and it's like those moments haven't went in his direction. Now he whiffed badly against United, and that's what really stands out to people, is like they're not going to think about the times where he put it on a plate for other players and they didn't put it in the back of the net. They're going to focus on the time where it was put on a plate for him and he didn't put that chance away. And so I can see the off the ball stuff. He's not bad defensively or anything like that. It's, as an attacking midfielder, I do expect you to get goals and assists. And I know some people are trying to create a narrative that a midfielder doesn't have to score goals and get assists, or it's not something that we would naturally expect. But I have a hard time that we got Kai Havertz, hard time believing that we got Kai Havertz for tackles and duels won and stuff like that. He is expected to score goals and assists. In fact, his position allows him to be available in the box more than anybody. I think in one of our games, he had the most touches in the opposition's box. He had more than anybody except for Martinelli. So the position requires him to be in those positions. So he's not in the box to pick daisies. He's in the box to score goals and get assists, and he's not doing that yet. And until he does that, I do think he's going to have a hard time at Arsenal. But this is just bullshit. Like, nobody is booing him. It's not a toxic environment at the Emirates where people are, calling him shit or whatever. Some people are mumbling under their breath, but nobody is sitting there going, "Oh my God, Kai Havertz, shit, get out, da-da-da, boo." Nobody's doing that. But I'm desperate for this guy to score a goal, man. Because I want it to be done. It's just, it's just a signing that we didn't have to make, that puts a lot of pressure on us and the player unnecessarily. But now that he's here and people can just say anything, because quite frankly, that is, unless I've missed something in the 3-4 games that I've been at, nobody is booing the kids. So what are they saying? Eric Toss says, I expect him to get at least 10 goals this season. Hugo says, Saka missed as good of a chance as Kai. That's more worrying for me. C. Wilder says, Havertz starts against Everton, no question. I think he's going to start every game. We're definitely in a situation where he's now that Thomas Partey is injured, there actually isn't that many other options. You can say Emile Smith-Rowe. Emile Smith-Rowe hasn't gotten a minute this season. He is not anywhere near, overtaking Kai in that position. It's not happening. You can say Trossard. Trossard actually played really well at left 8 against or for Belgium. Zinchenko actually played well in midfield for Ukraine, but neither of those players are seen as midfielders for Arsenal. Trossard is seen as a forward. Zinchenko is seen as a fullback. So, the only other person is Fabio Vieira, but I also think Arteta is liking the feeling of being able to bring Fabio in certain game states, pushing for a goal, not necessarily starting. So Kai's in a position where he's probably going to start every single game unless something drastic happens, at least until Thomas Partey comes back. So, we need to see a goal or assist soon, Allison says, why is Robson saying something like that? The Arsenal fans not helping either. It's also nothing is like more like somebody came on the show and like obviously if you get information, you're gonna think it's true because you trust the sources that are giving it to you. But Kai Havertz is not on 330,000 pounds per week. We all know that deep down in our spirit, right? We know that, right? Like he is not. But when a player starts doing poorly, then the media will just say he's on 300,000 pounds per week. And people just start to believe it because they want to lean into the hysteria around a player. He's not. He is paid closer to our highest paid earners. Like he is on 200,000 pounds per week, which is still a lot. But he is not being paid over 100,000 pounds more than our highest earners. Like that's just not it. And so, I'm worried that now because he's not hit the ground running the way that we kind of needed him to, that these stories are going to come out that create even more hysteria around a player that just kind of needs a quiet room. So yeah, Nocturnal says robbed of assists, not found on some good runs, had a PK taken away. Kai is so on an unlucky run. And somebody did point that out. I can't remember who it was, but they said that there's also an argument that his teammates are failing him. And I think he's failed himself in certain circumstances, but there are runs that he's making and he's not being found. And so he has to get used to his teammates. His teammates have to find him. I mean, there's a still of Martinelli and Kai Havertz on the left-hand side where if he just puts it in to Kai Havertz, he's in on goal, but he keeps his head down and continues to dribble and the door closes. And so there is a more balanced kind of conversation around Kai Havertz that I think it's hard to reach because the hysteria is just on another level. Like I didn't give a shit about how Kai Havertz did with Germany because Germany is crap. As a whole, they are not very good. And their manager got sacked and he rightfully so because they're not doing a very good job and Germany have been poor for years. But somehow it became Kai Havertz's fault and Arsenal fans were very, I think, invested in something that doesn't have anything to do with us. How I feel international duty is when our players play well, I enjoy it. If they don't play well, I don't give a fuck because they're not playing for Arsenal. But even Arsenal fans were very like emotionally invested in how he did for Germany, which I think we're getting a little too deep into it, which I understand because it's like it's a signing that we don't want to be bantered. It's we probably could have went in a different direction with it, but I think we're playing our own role in this and making it worse, which gives Stuart Robson kind of like the comfort to come in and say that fans are booing him when they're not, and nobody even question him because that is a bull-faced lie. DJ Oni says, even the media painted Jesus as a bad player, and a lot of fans ate it up. It's ridiculous, Jess. I can't wait for Kai to score or assist so that people will stop the negativity around him. Samuel says, the more games he's not performing in, he will be in the spotlight again and again. The main reason this is happening is Arsenal expected to go for the title, and he's going to be a scapegoat. It's just one of those situations where I don't think we needed to put ourselves into, but we've done, and I'm confused about that. I would love to ask Arteta, why did you go for Kai Havertz of all players to play in midfield? There's a lot of good midfielders that went to different clubs this season or this summer that we could have been in the mix for. And we went for somebody like this who, quite frankly, like wasn't even seen as a midfielder to a lot of people. So, I would love to ask him why he felt like it was necessary to bring him in. But at the same time, I want it to work now because it has to. And I think just a goal or an assist, I don't care how it comes, would alleviate some of that. But it's crazy how unlucky he's been because, I mean, like you guys said, the penalty didn't stand. He had one assist for an offside goal, like so many different things. Diallo says, I'm a Kai apologist, but Robson is chatting bullshit. The stadium fans have been very supportive of Kai, bar that back pass to Rice. The online fans are different, though. Exactly. And the fans in the stadium are not booing him. And why, like, the only player that I know of, or two players that I know of that have been treated a certain way by the Arsenal fans, or a Bowie when he had that really bad game, and Xhaka. and nothing like that has happened with Kai Havertz. So he's just, but the hysteria around the signing gives him the comfort level to just lie, and that's crazy because I could say that Kai Havertz, um, I could say Kai Havertz, like I could say anything about Kai Havertz and they would believe it. I could say anything. I could say that I could go online right now and say he's on 500,000 pounds per week. Um, and we actually didn't pay 65 million for him. We paid 100 million to Chelsea, and people will believe it because they want to lean into the hysteria. Chris says, speaking as half German, we are dog shit. While I'm not Kai Havertz's biggest fan, I hope nobody is judging Kai based on his Germany performances. All of our players are in a funk. But it like usually international games, especially that are not in big tournaments, nobody cares about. But all of a sudden, Kai Havertz's performance for Germany is super important. It's not. Um, it's just not. So yeah, he's one of those where it's desperate times right now for him to get an assist or a goal. Um, you know, right now it's just you could say anything and people would just eat it up and believe it. And I think we sometimes have to use our own brains too and be like, why are they saying this? They're saying it. Like, I mean, he is a constant conversation. Arsenal could win their next 3 or 4 games, but if he doesn't score a goal, people will focus more on that than anything else. And so he just needs to get off the mark, in some capacity. And some of that is his teammates passing to him in good positions and him just calming down and just, I mean, putting the ball in the back of the net. He has the quality to do it. But it's just whether or not he has the confidence. Um, so yeah. Ivy says, Havertz will turn good. He just needs to understand his teammates better. Martin says Abui was bunk, but had a redemption arc. It can happen. Newman says, fact is top players elevate teams. Havertz drags them down. Fair enough. He's the reason why Chelsea weren't any good. You're right. Diallo says Arteta is a crazy man. I'm convinced he genuinely believes that he can save Kai. There's a fine line between a genius or a lunatic. I mean, I think Arteta has kind of already entered into his insanity arc. He is in it fully with that whole thing about, Kai Havertz and, playing players out of position and, how he takes this road and that road. And, he's already in his insanity era. He's already there. C. Wilder says, man, I loved Abui. He has some crazy, funny comps on YouTube. And yeah, I loved Abui as well. So there you go. But yeah, you guys are going to go ahead and end the show there. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know there was some laggy points and all that kind of stuff, but I really thank you guys for being like sticking in there with me. These shows will be on audio soon. So I'll let you guys know when. Like I said, I'm updating the channel. These shows will be on audio soon. All shows will be on audio. Watch alongs are coming for the big games and cup games. So the next watch along or the first watch along will be Brentford, I think. So is it going to be Brentford? Let me look at my calendar. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah. No Man City, I think. One of those. I'll let you guys know. But we'll have watch alongs on the channel after games, immediately following games. There will be player ratings. And then, like I said, there will be I'm moving my memberships to Patreon. The Patreon content will be match previews as well as some other little bits and bobs and stuff like that. So yeah, updating the channel to give you guys some more value and to make it a little bit easier to create stuff for members. But I really enjoyed this. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye guys. Like and subscribe.